What's good, family? Just chilling, staying out the way, taking it day by day, you know. I would like you to take a listen to this.
African Americans built this nation. You built this nation. You know, you're just starting to get real credit for that. Okay, I don't know if you know that. You're just starting to get, you built the nation. We all built it, but you were such a massive part of it. Bigger than you were given credit for. Does that make sense? Right?
Sometimes you have to tell the truth and shame the devil, like the older generations say. After the arrival of Africans, there were indigenous people, also known as Native Americans, that was already here, who knew what it took to survive this land, later to be called America. Our indigenous ancestors knew what it took to survive each year, like knowing exactly how much food was gone last through the winter. That's when it was hard to gather food or just travel to the south during winter seasons. The European settlers saw that our indigenous people had a different way in going about things. That's when they came up with the word plantation. Yes, plantation meaning to plant, which brought slavery into play. The southern colonies began to get more settlers and food was the main objective, so everything came to revolve around farming or agriculture. That's when plantations became the center of attention, looking like money in the eyes of the European settlers. While all of this was coming into play, my ancestors didn't know what road they were headed down. What came to be known as plantations became the center of a large scale, leaving work to be done by the African ancestors. As settlers kept coming, the land where the plantations were at was stolen or just straight up took through violence from our indigenous people. The system took over the South and forced the indigenous people to leave their homelands. Their reason for taking their land in the South was because the weather, it was just right for crops they were farming, with the intentions on making a profit from the crops that the South depended on. The weather in the South was just right for planting the cash crops. That was the main reason. Plantations were really created to grow cash crops for the bag, money, currency, all of it spend the same. Tobacco, cotton, sugarcane, rice, and indigo all came out to be profitable, but tobacco and cotton was the real breadwinner. Bringing in big bucks, using cheap labor, was the European settlers' objective. Cheap labor was used at first, indentured servants, majority coming from England and a handful came from Africa, and enslaved Africans. You would see a few indigenous people working the land from time to time. The way the settlers had indentured servants working was on contract, like from 4 to 7 year terms, without pay, to live in the South, with a place to live, as well as meals. After the servants finished with their terms, they were often given land, clothes, and supplies. The way the plantation system was set up was like this. The wealthy settlers, also known as noblemen, who owned plantations, made their own rules to follow. In the southern colonies, there was a big difference between the rich and poor than it was in the north. The majority of the population were made up of poor farmers, indentured servants, and the enslaved. Even though the wealthy settlers ruled the plantations, the laborers controlled the plantation. The crops required large areas of land, the plantations grew in size, and more labor was needed on the plantations. This is really when slavery started to kick in. First it was right, but when there is money, there is greed, you know the rest. Plantation labor left indentured servitude alone and looked more into slavery, because the indentured servants had more economic opportunities coming in than working on a plantation. When the indentured servants stopped working on the plantations, wealthy landowners made purchasing land more difficult for the former servants. The rich got richer, and the use of slave labor increased. This made the free blacks and poor white people join together against the wealthy. So the government saw how the blacks and poor whites were strong together. They came up with a solution, made laws that put poor white people above all black people. This was a game changer that made it even more harder for our ancestors to come up. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Above Tier Media. Don't be afraid, leave a comment, and remember, it's about what you're doing now. Just don't forget about what you did yesterday. And I'm out.